Simple but not simplistic, the GROW model will be presented in this course as a framework for your coaching conversations. The GROW model is a tried and tested model to structure coaching conversations. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the model to raise awareness and responsibility and use the GROW model as a conversational process. In order to use tools effectively, we need to believe that a tool is the best one for the job, right? Thus, I want to share some benefits for being coached to lay the foundation for the belief in the power of coaching. They are improved sense of direction and focus, accelerated learning around a distinct topic, for example, managing people, relationships, or influence. Improved performance in an area, for example, professionally, health-wise, or finances. Increased knowledge of self or self-awareness. Improved personal effectiveness, for example, focused effort on priorities. Increased motivation or a sense of personal engagement. And increased resourcefulness or resilience, for example, an ability to handle change well. In this process of getting to know and becoming efficient in the GROW coaching model, we need to understand this model, which is known and designed to raise awareness and responsibility of the coachee. That is, the person you are coaching. The GROW coaching model is about learning through experience. That is, reflection, insight, making choices, and pursuing them. The success of a coaching conversation with the GROW model also depends on the time and energy invested into the process by the coachee and whether they commit to grow as they go along with their awareness. The power of the GROW coaching model is that it leads to a clearly defined end result through 4 phases. The coachee is personally active in identifying problems and generating ideas for solutions. This means that anything that comes out of the coaching conversation has a lot of chance to stick. GROW is an acronym derived from the 4 words representing the different stages of the conversational process. That is, goal, reality, options, and will, or way forward. It is important at this stage to emphasize that the GROW model is one coaching process out of many that are now available for coaches. There are many derivatives that also works great. Sir John Whitmore advocated that coaching was all about developing or raising 2 things in the coachee: their level of awareness and their level of responsibility. As he said, if I give you my advice and it fails, you will blame me. Thus, I've traded my advice for your responsibility, and that is seldom a good deal. So, coaching should raise the coachee's awareness about their situation and should instill a sense of personal responsibility. In other words, a coachee should be supported to view their situation differently so that they realize that they are able to move towards their goals. Awareness is raised in the goal and reality stages. And according to John Whitmore, awareness is gathering and clearly perceiving the relevant facts and information, and the ability to determine what is relevant. So, the coachee's awareness is raised in 3 ways. Firstly, by identifying the gap between where they would like to be, the goal, and where they are, the reality. This provides the coachee with a better understanding of what may be needed to move forward. And secondly, the reality stage focuses the coachee's attention on relevant information about the present in relation to the desired goal. Usually, new insights can emerge simply by talking about what is already happening. And thirdly, the coach's questions, active listening, summarizing, and paraphrasing can help the coachee to view the current reality from a more objective standpoint. Remember, awareness is created by looking at the gap between the current reality and the goal. Now, in the latter 2 stages, options and will, the coachee is encouraged to take personal responsibility for working towards their goals. Whitmore points out that responsibility is necessary for high achievement, as he says, when we truly accept, choose, or take responsibility for our thoughts and our actions, our commitment to them rises, and so does our performance. So this is one of the reasons that it is important for the coachee to identify possible obstacles that is standing in the gap of their goal, and then to identify plausible options to address these obstacles before selecting a specific and explicit way forward. The coachee should also commit to a self-selected action as a result of the coaching conversation. Here's a tip. As we will explore later on in another lesson when we discuss the coaching way of being, one important aspect of encouraging the coachee to take responsibility is for the coach not to take responsibility for finding any solutions or generating new ideas at all. Let's look at how to use the GROW model as a conversational process. The beauty about working with the GROW coaching model is that you don't need to be an expert in your coachee's specific situation to be able to coach them. Yes, the GROW model offers a framework with general questions to elicit goals, obstacles, options, and more without ever needing to offer advice or force any particular direction. To put it metaphorically, the GROW model is what you need to plan a journey. For instance, you start with where you are going, the goal, and then where you are coming from, reality. It then charts the different routes and modes of transportation, that is, the options. And at last, it helps you pick the option that suits you best, that is, the way forward, while still considering the obstacles on the way. You then chart out the process and make sure that your motivation for the trip is maximized. Let's shortly unpack each stage now with questions that capture the general focus of each. Let's kick off with the goal stage. As a coaching leader, two types of goals are essential. The first is a goal that you establish when you start coaching an employee or coachee for the first time. It's called the end goal. It is the goal that you establish for the entire coaching process at the first conversation. Here are some questions for the end goal. What would you like to be different as a result of these coaching conversations? What is it you would like to achieve? Or simply, what are your goals? Let's use an example. Let's call her Susan. Susan is one of your staff members and she needs coaching because she is so overwhelmed with all her tasks, which builds up and negatively influences her relationships and her enjoyment of her work. With some of the above questions of the end goal of what she would rather like to aspire to at work, she might get to an end goal of rather being calm and assertive at work. But in order for her to move closer to calm and assertive, she will have to be able to prioritize, delegate, or even not taking up some of the tasks on her plate at all. But we can't tell her that, so she needs to recognize that her end goal might be around saying no, or greater self-awareness around why she struggles with no, and then speaking up and allowing herself to have a voice. Then there's the second goal. That is the outcome goal for each and every coaching conversation. It is important for coaches to clarify what the coachee would like to achieve as an outcome of each coaching conversation. This should be very specific. The coach has an interest in ensuring that this outcome is achievable within the given time constraints. Here are some questions for the outcome goal. What would you like to achieve within our time together? Or what is your desired outcome for this conversation? Or what would you like to achieve during this coaching conversation? For example, our coachee Susan, after some of these outcome goal questions, might need to choose which of the end goals she wants to tackle first. She might start with the most pressing one, the not saying no. And to get to an outcome goal, we want to ask her what an outcome would be if we focus on saying no. She might recognize that for her to be able to say no, she will have to deal with her fear of the person's reaction when she says no to them. The goal becomes something like moving into strong self-confidence. And now we have a good outcome goal. This will greatly assist in how the rest of the conversation with Grow will go. Because as the saying goes, if you don't pin the goal well, you will row around for the rest of the session. Another thing that's very important when setting goals is formulating it positively. It is about what the coachee want to achieve, not what they don't want. Remember that what you focus on increases. So when you focus on not doing something, all you think about is that thing, right? And it will increase. That is how our brains work. So here's an example of how to formulate a goal positively. Don't make the goal stop procrastinating. That is the negative. Rather say, achieve a daily discipline. With our coachee Susan, in the example above where she recognizes her fear of saying no, we moved her from formulating it negatively, like, I don't want to fear somebody's response, to formulating it positively, for instance, growing in confidence in herself. That will help her to not fear the response and to be able to say no. Another example of formulating it positively would be that often people come to the leader or coaching with a problem statement. We want to assist through good questioning to formulate a positive goal by getting the end goal and focus to be around what the outcome is when the problem does not exist anymore. With our coachee Susan, we can ask questions like, how do you respond when you do not fear the other person's response? Or how would you respond if you did not fear a person's response? The outcome would lead her to see or experience herself as the person with confidence and not fear, causing it to become a positive formulated goal. Next is the reality stage. The reality stage allows the coachee to clarify the current situation in relation to what they've identified as a goal, and creates an opportunity for you as coach to strengthen your relationship with the coachee by demonstrating active listening and empathy. As a novice coach, it may be helpful to focus your attention on listening to understand the person rather than trying to understand the situation in order to offer a solution. This is a common trap as a leader, as many of us are trained to listen for problems to try to identify solutions. In fact, many novice coaches report that having the answer can get in the way of genuine listening. For example, with our coachee Susan, we want to now allow her to unpack her reality of all her tasks and her inability to say no and not having a voice. It is a time for us to observe, listen, and empathize with the challenges she is facing, regardless whether we think it is challenging or not. Effective and experienced coaches may seem to be just listening during the reality stage, but they are actually doing much more in the background. Let's look at what that is. They are demonstrating active listening. They are asking open questions. They are avoiding leading questions. And they are being aware of the process. They are ensuring an appropriate focus on the goal. They are listening for the facts. They are noticing emotions. And they are observing body language. What a mouthful. But please see the lesson notes additional resources area for a detailed unpacking of each of these skills. Here are some questions for the reality stage. What is happening at the moment? What is working at the moment? And what is not working? How similar is this to situations you have faced before? For example, with our coachee Susan, we want her now to unpack about her lack in self-confidence, all the tasks that she appreciates herself for tackling, her inability to say no, and even the fear she has of others' reaction when she says no. All regardless whether we think this is bad or not. It is not for us to judge. Let's move on to the option stage now. That is, what options can you think of that will help you to move closer to your goal or overcome obstacles? By now, the coachee's goal should be clear, and the current reality will have been discussed. There is likely to be a gap between what the coachee hopes to achieve and where they perceive themselves to be at present. There are 2 steps in going about in the options stage to overcome obstacles or to move closer to the goal. They are generating options and evaluating them. Let's look at the first, generating options. At this point, the coachee should be encouraged to think about ways of moving closer to their goal by generating as many options as possible. Tools and techniques for helping the coachee to think creatively are discussed also in later lessons. It is important, though, for the coach to push the coachee to identify as many options as possible, as it has been suggested that the quantity of options is more important at this stage than the quality and feasibility of each. In some cases, a coachee can change their self-perception from victim, I have no control, to victor, I can choose my own destiny, simply by realizing that they have a number of options. For example, our coachee Susan. She may now realize that she is able to say no, and that perhaps the reaction might not even be all that bad. With appreciating the enormous amount of tasks she tackles, she might recognize the option of seeing her value and that she has the power to say no, because she adds a great deal of value with her skill and experience. She realizes the options of delegating and even requesting redistribution of tasks from the start. So now it's evaluating time. Once some options have been identified, the coach should work with the coachee to evaluate them. While having a number of choices can be empowering, too many choices can be overwhelming. The evaluation criteria should be selected by the coachee. In other words, the coachee should decide how they will choose the best option to pursue. First up, sometimes this can be done by asking the coachee which option is the simplest to implement, or the most likely to result in a positive outcome, or the most desirable. At other times, it may be more helpful to go down the list of options, assessing the pros and cons of each. And then there will also be occasions when a more structured process feels appropriate. In this case, the coachee can create a grid, identifying some criteria to apply to each option, and could then rate each criterion on a scale of 1 to 10. For example, our coachee Susan. She might now choose to start saying no, with her newfound appreciation of her abilities, as well as speaking up to her manager about perhaps redistributing her tasks. She might choose to even say no in the moment when someone else asks her to do something, and then make sure she empathizes and speak about the fear she has of their dislike of her, especially when they are upset with her after saying no. But all that she remembers, it is a higher priority for her to say no than to avoid getting a negative reaction. Here are some questions for the option stage. If you could do anything, what would you do? Or, if you were to advise a friend who faced the same situation, what would you suggest? Or, how would someone you really admire deal with this situation? And last but not least, the will stage. That is, what will you do as a result of this coaching conversation? This is the last stage of the growth process. Now that the coachee has selected the options they wish to pursue, it is simply a case of checking for levels of commitment and agreeing an action plan. At this stage, the coachee should be encouraged to commit to their next steps using SMART objectives. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Using this acronym will help the coachee to set realistic, easily measurable tasks before the next coaching conversation. Please see the lesson notes additional resources area for a detailed unpacking of these SMART goals. So, if we accept that coaching is all about supporting a person to change how they act in order to help them to achieve their goals, then being able to assess their intention to act is a necessary skill for coaches. Through a combination of what a coach says, the emotions they express, and information gathered from their body language, the experienced coach is able to make informed judgments about how likely they are to proceed with an action that they have identified. For example, if Susan is engaged throughout the session, sits forward when deciding what needs to happen, and is perhaps avidly writing down notes about her next steps, her intention to act may be perceived as high. On the other hand, if she looks despondent throughout, has her arms crossed perhaps, refuses to write anything, and spends most of her time looking down at her feet or hands, it is not likely that she will proceed with any action that is agreed. Ultimately, it is impossible to know whether a coachee will undertake the actions that they have identified. But a subjective assessment of intention to act can sometimes encourage the coach to check a coachee's level of commitment. If there is a discrepancy between the level of commitment and the proposed task, the coach can either work with the coachee to raise the level of commitment or ask to select a less challenging task. It is important that the coachee leaves the coaching conversation motivated and hopeful that they will be able to achieve the task that they have set themselves. Throughout the conversation, and especially during the will stage, coaches should be considering the readiness of their coachees. In other words, using all of the information available, the body language, the mood, what is said, and the coach should consider how open the coachee is to address the topic or issue that is under discussion. For example, if a coachee has been sent to receive coaching, there is a good chance that they may not be ready to be coached. Equally, if a coachee has a headache or is otherwise unwell, they are less likely to benefit from the discussion. Of course, it may be helpful for the coach to check in with the coachee their level of readiness prior to the start of a coaching conversation, or for the coach to ask whether they are ready with a reminder of an appointment. Here are some questions for the will stage. What could you do? What should you do? Now, what will you do? Or, how will you know that you have succeeded? Or, how committed are you to the actions that you have identified on a scale of 1 to 10? So, for example, our coachee Susan, she's now motivated to have a discussion with her manager the next day, if she is able, as well as prepare herself mentally to say no to the coworker that she wants to start saying no to. She has written down some motivational quotes to herself and will be accountable to a friend who also works with her in order to carry out her plan. In conclusion, it is found that there is no one coaching process that is the right one. However, it has been shown that a coach's belief in their chosen process has a significant impact on the perceived success of the coaching partnership. While you have the choice to select a preferred coaching model or even create your own, there are 2 key points that should be kept in mind. A coaching conversation must follow a process, and the purpose of coaching is to support goal setting and attainment. Remember, at heart, coaching is an interaction that supports people to achieve goals. In a sense, the desire to achieve something, overcome a barrier, or fulfill an ambition is what brings people to the coaching leader. In the next lesson, we unpack another important coaching skill to add to your toolbox of skills. That is listening. Listening is the ability to focus completely on what the coachee is saying and is not saying, to understand the meaning of what is said in the context of the coachee's desires, and to support coachee self-expression. I look forward to unpack this important topic with you.